Hello guys, welcome to another session of chemistry. In this session we are starting a new series on the periodic table. I'm very sure we are quite familiar with the periodic table. We've seen the periodic table once or twice, or even more than that. And when we were in junior schools, I know in basic science, we were compelled to learn the first 20 elements. So it means that we've been familiar with the periodic table. We know what elements belong to the periodic table, and we also know what the essence of the periodic table is. Now, in this lecture, what we want to do is take it a step further, all right, and then discuss these elements in details, right? We want to discuss these elements in details and see how, number one, the periodic table was formed, what properties run through the periodic table, and the chemical importance of the periodic table. So that's what we'll be doing in this series. It's a very interesting series, and I encourage you to follow our lectures back to back, all right, so you don't miss out on any important point. So the study of the periodic table, the study of the periodic table first began with the man who we call the father of modern chemistry, the French chemist Antoine Lavoisier, in 1789, when he tried grouping elements, all right. At the time, he discovered some elements, or he looked at these elements and he said, okay, how do we categorize these elements such that we can have a simple way of characterizing them, all right, to make chemistry far easier. All right, then Antoine Lavoisier grouped elements into four. Number one, he said elements are grouped as air, metals, non-metal, and earth, okay? He said elements are air, metals, non-metals, and earth. Some texts say he grouped elements as air, solid, water, and earth, as the case may be. Some say air, fire, metal, and earth, as the case may be. But then we knew that Antoine Lavoisier just placed it on a vague standard, all right, grouping anything solid as either metal or non-metals, collectively called earth, right? And then grouped the gases as air. He said elements are either a mixture of gases, they are either liquids or solids, mostly solids. But then as chemistry advanced, we saw that this method of classifying elements was not accurate. So we needed a more accurate way of classifying elements to make the study of chemistry easy for us chemistry students and chemistry researchers. And then in 1829, another chemist called Dobereiner came. And what Dobereiner did was he created elements, or he grouped elements into threes. And today we call that method of classification the Dobereiner's triad. So Dobereiner classified elements into three, and it says that every element in that group, all right, have the same property. So what he did was, to the first group, he grouped lithium, sodium, and potassium. That was the first three. The second three, he grouped magnesium, calcium, and strontium. All right. And in the third three, he grouped boron, aluminium, right, and gallium into the third three. And then he must have gone through a painstaking effort trying to group these atoms. Because it says that to every group, there is a high level of resemblance in terms of chemical properties, in terms of physical properties, in terms of differences in their atomic weights, and several other factors, all right, which was correct. And then we still needed an elaborate way of classifying elements, right? We needed an elaborate way of classifying elements. Then after Dobereiner, we had a man called Joseph Prout. Joseph Prout didn't only contribute to the periodic table, he also contributed to our study of atoms when he gave us the law of conservation of mass, that all pure samples of a particular chemical compound have the same elements and the same proportions by mass, which we still follow even up to today in balancing of chemical equations. So Joseph Prout also contributed his quota to the study of the periodic table, and he says that every element in the periodic table are odd number of hydrogen atoms. And now it is important to note that what an atom meant in the time of Joseph Prout is different from what we mean as atoms today. What an atom meant in the time of Joseph Prout was a unit mass of a substance. So Joseph Prout at his time says if you have an atom like carbon, carbon have 12 atoms of hydrogen. That was what an atom meant then. That every unit mass of a substance is called an atom. all right? Because prior to Joseph Proust, there was no subatomic particles. We used to believe that the atom is the smallest particle of an element, and a bunch of other things. But then, Joseph Proust was kind of reasonable in his classification because he realizes at the time, that every element in the periodic table, as every element that existed at that time, had the atomic masses to be whole numbers, right? And these whole numbers, since hydrogen has a mass of 1, it means there are multiples of hydrogen atoms. And that was what he said. And then after Joseph Proust, of course, one beautiful thing about science is somebody comes, spends his whole life trying to discover something, giving us academic reports on whatever subject matter he chooses to major in. And then another chemist comes to disprove all that he has done. So this chemist, to the betterment of science, came disproving what the preceding chemist has said, all right, and giving us a better hypothesis and a better argument, all right, as to why we need to believe what he's postulating to us and not probably what the previous chemist said. So, John Newlands, which was a British chemist, looked at Proust and every other chemist that came before him, and he said there should be a better way of classifying elements. And then what he did was he took elements in groups of 8. Of course, he also had a kind of an affiliation with music. So apart from science, he was somewhat involved in music. And then he understood that in music there are 8 notes, from the do to fa, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti. Do, the T is the 8th and do is the 9th, which serves as an octave of the preceding notes, all right? This has been talked about in our lecture on sound waves. But then he understood that there were 8 notes, all right? And then he says, okay, on the premise of that, classified elements also into 8. And then we call his classification today the law of octaves. And the law of octaves has been adopted even to the modern periodic table, because the modern periodic table now has 8 groups, credits to John Newlands. So he gave us the arrangement of elements. He started from, okay, let's look at what he did. He started from hydrogen, which was the lightest element, or which is the lightest element. From hydrogen, he moved to helium, to lithium, to beryllium, right, to boron, to carbon, to nitrogen, oxygen, fluorine, neon, sodium, and it goes on that way, right? And what John Newlands said was that every 8 elements in the series have the same properties. So it means that if you pick an element now and you count the next 8 elements, they will have the same chemical properties. They will show very little trend in physical properties and a host of other things. And it was found to be correct, because if you pick an element, say you discuss helium, for example, what is the next 8 from helium? This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. The next 8 element is neon. And the knowledge of chemistry we have today tells us that there is actually a relationship between helium and neon, right? Now, if you pick lithium, the next 8 will be sodium, right? There is a strong relationship between lithium and sodium. So it was the first major chemist, all right, to give us an actual arrangement of elements. And then it was also the first to document his work. And then he submitted his work to then the body of science. And then unfortunately for John Newlands, his work wasn't really recognized until the Russian chemist called Dmitry Mendeleev came. And then Dmitry Mendeleev looked at it, okay, instead of having a long list of elements, all right, calling them the law of octaves that says every 8 elements of the series have the same properties, why not create a table in such a way that we have boxes and then fixing these elements into those boxes, all right, in order of considering certain trends, which was what he did. So the Russian chemist Dmitry Mendeleev came up with a table. That was the first table, okay, we had, and that was when the name periodic table was coined in the 1800s, in the late 1800s. And what Dmitry Mendeleev did was he arranged elements in order of their increasing atomic masses, right? And then at the time of Mendeleev, there were several other elements that were yet to be discovered. So Mendeleev didn't just create a table, he also fixed those elements into those boxes depending on certain trends. Actually, the trend he considered was atomic masses. And then the genius to Mendeleev's work was that he left spaces for undiscovered elements at the time, And he didn't just leave spaces for undiscovered elements at the time, he also predicted their properties. That was genius. Because at the time, those elements were yet to be discovered. We didn't even know they would exist. And then what he did was he created a table, right, fixed in the elements that were available at the time, and then he left spaces for undiscovered elements, and he said whatever elements will fit into these spaces would have the following properties. And when those elements were eventually discovered, they followed his prediction. So, and of course, you know, in science, when you discover something, if you're a pioneer of something, you will be awarded that thing, and you will be called the father of that subject. For example, if you are the pioneer of periodic table, you'll be called the father of periodic table. Just as Michael Faraday is the father of electromagnetism, as is the father of electrolysis, and also is the father of electric induction. John Newlands should have been the father of the periodic table, but there was too much genius attributed to Dmitri Mendelev's work that we couldn't just overlook Dmitri Mendeleev giving the title to John Newlands. So Dmitri Mendeleev was given the first major credit to the study of the periodic table, which created a huge discomfort to John Newlands. And then he wrote a letter to the scientific body stating his disinterest and his dissatisfaction to their decision. They had to apologize to him, but at least he also agreed that Dmitri Mendeleev did something very crazy. And then after Dmitri Mendeleev, we had a chemist called Lothar Meyer. Lothar Meyer did something similar to Dmitri Mendeleev in the sense that he also created a table. He fixed elements into the table, but he didn't leave spaces for undiscovered elements, and he didn't predict their properties. And as a matter of fact, his work was a year later than Dmitri Mendelev's. So Dmitri Mendeleev was recognized before Lothar Meyer. Dmitri Mendeleev also gave us a law, which is called the periodic law. Because when creating the table, what he did was he used the atomic masses of elements to arrange these elements. So he fixed elements into the periodic table using atomic masses. And I think that was the only and major blemish to his work, because at the time, the subatomic particles were not discovered. Subatomic particles were discovered a few years after that, all right, less than 10 years after that. The first was electrons by John Joseph Thomson. So, but before the discovery of electrons, Dmitri Mendeleev already published his work. So, Dmitri Mendeleev used atomic masses because that was the best he could do at the time. And then he noticed something, a challenge when grouping these elements. And what he noticed was that the atomic mass of an element is not a unique property. Because when he was filling these elements, right, he came across some elements like argon and calcium. Argon has an atomic mass of 18, calcium has, an atomic number of 18, calcium has an atomic number of 20. But argon has an atomic mass of 40 on approximation. Calcium has an atomic mass of 40 on approximation. So, Dmitri Mendeleev didn't know which to put first. Should he put argon before calcium or calcium before argon? Because what he did was he grouped elements in an increasing order of their atomic masses. And then when he got to calcium and argon, he was puzzled and didn't know what to put before what. So what he did was he intentionally reduced the atomic mass of argon. All right, so he reduced the atomic mass of argon instead of 40 to 38. All right, and he placed it before calcium, but he knew that it was a problem, and then he published his work that way. And then what was his excuse for doing that? He said argon most likely is an hodgepodge of a soup of elements, such that argon in itself contains impurities, and these impurities added to the mass of argon. But we could not argue with him because he was Dmitri Mendeleev, the genius. But as chemistry advanced, all right, we came across some other elements which share the same properties. For example, cobalt and nickel. Cobalt has an atomic mass of 60. Nickel also approximately has an atomic mass of 60, amongst others. All right, so this caused us to take a pause. And we questioned Dmitri Mendeleev's work for the first time. That could it be that argon contained impurities adding to its mass? Or could it be that argon itself, as well as other elements in the periodic table, actually share the same atomic mass? All right, and the question to that, the answer to that question was given by the man who we know as the father of modern periodic table, called Henry Moseley. But before we talk about Henry Moseley's work, it is important we state that Dmitri Mendeleev stated a law as to the periodic table, and the law is called the periodic law. The periodic law states that the properties of elements are a periodic function of their atomic masses. In quotes, atomic masses. So what Dmitry Mendeleev did was that he said the properties of elements in the periodic table are a periodic function of their atomic masses. Okay? And of course, this wasn't so correct. So when Aaron Moseley came, what Aaron Moseley just did was, number one, he followed John Newland's method of classification. Remember, John Newland stated the law of octaves. So he grouped the periodic table into 8. That was the first thing he did. And secondly, because John Newland's, as being a protege, being a contemporary to Lord Ernest Rutherford, actually his student, understood that the protons are unique to atoms, to elements. So instead of using atomic masses which were not unique to elements, because some elements can actually share the same atomic mass, he used another factor called the atomic number, which now is a unique property. Atomic number. So what Aaron Moseley did was that it grouped elements in terms of increasing atomic numbers. And then he modified Dmitry Mendeleev's periodic law and stated the modern periodic law. And what does the modern periodic law states? It states that the properties of elements in the periodic table are a periodic function of the atomic number. So the only thing that changed there was atomic number to replace atomic mass. And then it is important to state here that if you are asked to state the periodic law, although Dmitry Mendeleev gave us a periodic law, you do not state Dmitry Mendeleev's work, because now Dmitry Mendeleev's work has been modified. So whether you are asked to state the periodic law or the modern periodic law, you are stating the periodic law in the Aaron Moseley fashion, which says that properties of elements are a periodic function of their atomic numbers. So what Aaron Moseley did was he created a table. He gave us 8 groups and 7 periods. We'll talk about that in the next video. And then he grouped elements accordingly using their atomic numbers. He also had his challenge in the sense that he came across isotopes which had the same atomic number but different atomic masses. But his argument was correct because isotopes are atoms of the same elements. And what we are classifying here are elements. So it didn't cause or it didn't raise any need to modify or to add more to the periodic table. So the periodic table Aaron Moseley gave us was sufficient enough to sustain us even up to this day. Today, the periodic table has about 118 elements, and many more elements are yet to be discovered. The first 82 of them are naturally occurring elements, which means they are stable elements, while the next from 83 up to 118 are artificial elements. And why are they artificial elements? Because number one, they are highly unstable, they are highly radioactive, and they decompose faster than others. All right. So guys, that's how we came about the periodic table we have today. So whenever you see the periodic table, or when next you see the periodic table, give thanks to all these scientists who spent their lives adding one thing to the other to give us what we have today. And special thanks to Dmitry Mendeleev for making an attempt to create the first table, and to Aaron Moseley for giving us the table we have today. In the next video, we'll look at terminologies used in the periodic table. I hope this section was fun. I hope it was insightful and it revealed a number of things to you. In the next lecture, we'll talk about terminology used in the periodic table. So stay relaxed, stay tuned, and join us in our next lecture when we talk about terminology used in the periodic table. Thanks and bye for now.